Thanks for that amazing intro, Miggy. It's really great for us to be here at Figma at Config 2022, and we're excited to share some of our work with you over the next 20 minutes.
Thank you to the entire Figma team for having us and for all their hard work and support in making this conference happen.
My name is Eric Lee. I'm a senior product designer and developer at the Museum of Modern Art.
And I'm Stephanie Schapowal. I'm a product designer at MoMA.
For those who don't know, MoMA is one of the world's leading institutions for modern and contemporary art. We're located in Midtown New York, and although you may have heard of other MoMAs, such as SF MoMA, which is only a few blocks from where we're presenting today, unfortunately, we're not affiliated, so no, your membership will not work at MoMA in New York. I'm sorry about that. In 2019, we closed the museum for a bit and went through a pretty big expansion project. The picture you see up on the slide right now is a result of that project. In addition to changing the layout of the entire building, we also went through a pretty big change in our curatorial program. We completely rethought how we tell stories of modern and contemporary art to be more inclusive. And to do that, we started changing out works of art in our collection galleries once a quarter.
This is our team, the digital product team at MoMA. We're a small but mighty team with backgrounds in art, design, engineering, and product. Everything we do is a collaborative effort, both within our team, but also on the wider creative team, which includes design, content and editorial, and marketing. We serve as an in-house agency for other teams throughout the museum, and in a form follows function kind of way. We also sit on the only open floor plan floor in the building.
So what does it mean to do digital product at a museum? Well, I'm glad you asked. It turns out that our team actually works on quite a bit. What you see on the screen right now is just a laundry list of some of the things that we go over in a year. We like to say that we're responsible for all the digital surfaces of the museum, and our colleagues in graphic design are responsible for all the physical surfaces. So naturally, there's a lot of collaboration there. Going back to some of the things that we work on, of course, our primary surface is the museum's website, MoMA.org, and that receives about 15 million unique visitors a year. These are some of the screenshots of our site that show kind of the brand in various stages of expression, and we'll get a bit more into some of the specifics in a bit. We also work on things like this. This is what we call the program wall, and it's located in the museum's lobby. And it functions as like a directory wayfinding system for our visitors. For now, the only thing you really need to know is that it has 33 million pixels on it. We also work on in-gallery interactives. These are page turners, which are interactive experiences for visitors to browse through books and other printed matter that our curators have considered to be important as telling stories of an exhibition. What you see here is a book that was created with our colleagues in imaging and visual resources for the American photographer Dorothea Lange.
What unifies this work and the work of our colleagues throughout the museum is MoMA's mission statement. MoMA was founded almost 100 years ago by 3 women as an educational institution. And so while revenue is always a factor in our work, the mission statement allows us to prioritize the visitor experience and put the user first. We turn to it when we're thinking about questions like, how do we share our collection online? Or how does MoMA's history as a steward of design influence our work today? As well as thinking about how we make our work accessible and engaging to all of our audiences, which can range from scholars to children, from New Yorkers to international visitors. We'll share today 2 projects that demonstrate what it's like to practice product design within a mission-driven institution like MoMA. The first project relates to our website. We've had one since 1996, and it's gone through a lot of iterations since then. It feels special to work on a website where you can trace the history of web design through it. And this is our current navigation. We feel like it does a good job of representing the website's many goals and priorities. Our website supports ticketing, resources for education and research, e-commerce, membership, as well as representing our collection, which in one way or another we've always tried to share online. Less than 2% of MoMA's collection is on view in the galleries at any given time, so our website is a crucial part of making that collection accessible to a wider audience and supporting our educational mission beyond the building itself. And in both the building and on our website, we think a lot about discoverability, which feels like a UX buzzword, but it's also important to the mission of a museum. Our Our team and all of our colleagues throughout the museum are always thinking about how we can help our visitors get where they need to go quickly, but also introduce moments of surprise and delight and help them discover something new. And when we were working on our artist section recently, we found that we had a discoverability problem. Our artist section lists all 26,000 plus artists that have work within MoMA's collection. And as part of the 2019 reopening of the museum that Eric mentioned, we worked not only to expand the footprint of the museum and rehang the collection, but the digital product team also worked to refresh every part of the website. That includes the artist index and the artist pages. Our index, as it was, mainly catered to researchers or people who are already familiar with artists. As you can see from this very, very, very long list, there isn't much to help you, to attract you to one artist or another. And because of that, we found that a lot of people would click on the first listing, which is I Know Alto. As you can imagine, all of our artists have pages, but not all of those pages have content. With 26,000 artists, filling all of these pages with thoughtful content would be a monumental task for our content and editorial team, who already work on so much. We wanted to improve our index to help users better find good content that team was already creating. And we also wanted our users, when they found an artist, to have a rich content experience. So here are a few improvements that we made to that section. We added the ability to toggle your sort. So instead of only being able to sort alphabetically, we added the option to sort randomly as well. For more casual browsers, it helps you find new artists beyond just those that start with A. We also added portraits to the index results, which I think helps give more personality to some of these artists. We found that after we added these portraits, the artists that got portraits were gaining about 10 times more clicks than they were before they had them. And as these artist pages are being reviewed and augmented by the content and editorial team, we're adding portraits to more and more artists. Because the feature of having portraits on our site is relatively new, the content that is associated with those artists has been reviewed recently and therefore is pretty robust and up to date. We also added what we call the no results component. So if you search for an artist that we don't have within our collection, this serves up 3 artists with portraits and therefore good content to help you discover someone new. When we were thinking about these artist pages, we were thinking about how not everyone learns in the same way and not everyone is interested in reading a long biography. Besides a bio, these pages had included an index of works that MoMA has from this artist within our collection, as well as exhibitions they'd been a part of at MoMA. We wanted to think about how we could incorporate other types of content that our content producers were already working on, as well as adding some personality to these artists and giving a better sense of their practice. The first change that we made was adding this representative image, which can be a major work or a self-portrait or an image of the artist within their studio, so to just give a well-rounded look at their studio practice or their personality. We also added a left rail navigation to help users quickly and easily understand what kind of content is on this page and link to it quickly. Below that, we added links to relevant art terms. Our art terms glossary includes definitions of relevant mediums and movements, so users can help place these artists within a greater context. We also pull in related audio stops on this page, so when you're in the museum looking at work within the galleries and listening to audio tours, all of these are hosted on our website. So users who are at home are able to listen to them too. And if none of this content is your thing, we could also direct you towards some books. We found that after we made these improvements, the average time on some of our top artist pages increased by about 20 seconds, so from about 1.5 minutes up to closer to 2 minutes. And we work iteratively, so we're continuously monitoring how these pages are doing to see how we can even further improve. We think of these pages, the artist pages in the artist index, as well as some of our collection pages, as part of the reference section of our site. And just like we wouldn't trim a piece of art to fit it on a wall, we also don't crop our images of artworks when we share them as part of the reference section. So in that way, our mission also influences how we treat our images. However, we do allow ourselves to crop images when we use them for marketing, so whether that's an ad or an exhibition module on the homepage, as you can see in the image on the right. These rules around cropping our images for reference are in part to avoid emails like this. Sometimes you get emails from artists who are angry about how we've used their images for marketing and how they're cropped. And so it's just a reminder of when we're working with art and artists, there are always edge cases to account for in our work.
Great, thanks, Steph. So switching gears a little bit, let's talk about another project that is near and dear to our hearts, which is wayfinding. Specifically, the digital screens throughout the museum. A lot of this work coincides with the 2019 renovation that was done by the architects Delors, Scoffedio, and Renfro. And since this expansion accounts for a third of the museum's current footprint, we definitely had to rethink how we did wayfinding. And so as part of this project, we definitely had this desire to really include digital signage as a core part of our visitor journey. And you can see some of the results of that in this slide, where in the background there's physical silkscreen signage, and in the foreground are digital screens. To prepare for this, we designed and built some prototypes based on our previous design system and put them in our lobby. These were definitely provisional and were one-offs, but they let us try out some new ideas and collect user feedback, which was really important. We had two goals when designing these screens. The first was to communicate an entire day's program, and it turns out that at places like MoMA has a lot going on every day. And so we thought, okay, what does it mean to present a slice of the museum at a given moment in time? And the second goal was, since we were worried about circulation and people dwelling in the lobby, we wanted to make sure visitors got on their way in under 10 seconds. These are kind of oppositional goals, and that can be kind of challenging, but they're also really good in informing our design decisions. So let's set the scene. It's summer of 2019. The museum has closed. We're getting ready for reopening. The lobby is kind of getting a new floor, and our work on the creative team and on digital product is finally kicking into high gear. What you see here is a rendering from around then. The architects had set aside some space on the walls. This is the moment when you enter the museum, you've gone through security, picked up your tickets, and you arrive at what we call the program wall. And this was a wall space that we had reserved for digital signage, but hadn't yet agreed on what it would be yet. And after a lot of back and forth, what we decided on was 4 98-inch vertically oriented 4K monitors. And that comes together to form 16 by 7 feet of digital real estate. And that is how we got to 33 million pixels to work with. And so now, what do we do? What do we put on this program wall? Well, to do that, we worked collaboratively across digital product and design to sketch on 4 different directions. These directions picked different things to focus on. Some focused on highlighting the floor plan of the museum, whereas others were a bit more image heavy, focusing on works of art. Others also decided to take a more minimal approach. From here, we picked 2 directions to move forward with for refinement and user testing. And after multiple rounds of testing, we landed on this design, which we lovingly call layer cake, as a former colleague remarked, because it looks like a layer cake, although I don't really see it, but you know. Taking a closer look on the 3 screens on the left, we see exhibitions grouped by each vertical core of the museum. We decided to make it easier for visitors to understand what's going on by splitting the museum into a west core, north core, and south core. And on the right side, we have a screen that shows the day's events. This has since been adapted to show both events and a link to our visitor guide, which we transitioned from print to digital during COVID. And we think that this is a pretty good representation of what goes on at MoMA during a day. And it was definitely funny because during user testing, we thought that some of the more true to floor plan designs would win out, but users unanimously preferred this design. And I suppose that's just a good lesson to always test your assumptions. Of course, it takes a village to make all of this come together. We worked with our colleagues in design, IT, and AV, as well as those in security and visitor engagement to produce these screens. Here are a couple of fun moments behind the scenes that show what had to happen for this to come together. Taking a closer look at what we actually show on these screens, you can see that there's surprisingly a lot. And don't let their simplicity from afar deceive you. We start by pulling in exhibition data and events from our custom CMS. And because MoMA has so many specific rules about how we display content and information, we've had this custom CMS to let us do that. But we also have to consider things that don't apply on the website, but are much more important here. things such as our badges, which indicate when things are in member preview or in last look, become significantly important to visitors as they plan out their day, as well as things such as coat room, restaurants, and rest areas. The system that we built for the program wall also had to be reconfigured for our elevator screens. Here you can see one of 19 elevator directories throughout our campus that all run under the same underlying software that the program wall runs on. Besides the screens, another really important set of screens we have are ultra-wide screens that sit above the ticketing, film, and membership desks in the lobby. These serve as primary tools for our visitors to enter the museum and provide things such as ticket lists and member benefits, but can display other things dynamically. This is a scene from a couple months ago. This is Steph standing in our lobby after hours. And what we're doing here is we're actually scale testing the screens for an event called Uniqlo New York City Nights. And scale testing is something that you might normally associate with print and graphic design. But we do it at MoMA because we are working on these screens at such different scales in our computer monitor that we always have to make sure that what we're designing actually looks good at scale. So these are the screens that we have. It's quite a big program. You may be wondering how we actually do it. The first step is nomenclature. It's kind of a boring term, but really, really important, especially when it comes to visitor journeys. We think about how the messaging across all of our wayfinding, from the screen-printed walls to the elevator to the screens, all have to be consistent in order for visitors to have a clear experience no matter what they're looking at. This extends beyond naming and also includes things such as shared iconography. And this is all part of a larger ongoing discussion that we have on wayfinding, which we call progressive disclosure. Progressive disclosure is a system that we came up with that makes sure that we don't overwhelm our visitors at the museum when they enter. And the name kind of tells you what it is. The idea is that we reveal things progressively as the visitor gets deeper into their visitor journey throughout the museum. So let's say you enter the museum, you want to see an exhibition, and you know it's in the gallery. So we're kind of saying, OK, your first encounter, which is what we call this, is that the exhibition is in the galleries somewhere. And we kind of point you there. And then when you get on the floor, you'll want to know more specifics. So we'll say the exhibition you're looking for is actually in the Menschel galleries. And that's what we call the last encounter. And then finally, when you get to the gallery itself, we call that the final destination. And we reveal the full name of the gallery. And so thinking about progressive disclosure in our screens, it turns out that the screens actually sits in that last encounter moment. And here's a really nice moment in the slide where we see the screens displaying exhibitions and telling visitors where to go in concert with the background, which shows the last encounter locations screen printed on the walls. So it's really important for us to have a consistent experience in naming convention throughout all journeys. The second step was data. We wanted to build our screens off of the same infrastructure as MoMA.org because this provides one source of truth and is easy for our content producers to update. But of course, we also want to have tools for things that are specific to our screens. Things such as garden closures or amenities for food and stores are all things that we had to build on top of our data feed. And because we had this custom CMS, it was really easy for us to then combine everything into one feed that our screens could then use. It turns out that everything these days is a website. Figma has a desktop app, but that is actually just a wrapper for a website. Similarly, things such as VS Code and Slack all are also websites. So maybe it's not that surprising that our screens are also built on websites. Here you see the ticketing and program wall screens running on my computer in a browser. And besides letting us monitor the screens really easily, we can do really cool things since now our website and our screens are in one unified code base. You may have heard of this term called atomic CSS. You may have even used it. It's a pretty common tool these days, and one that is very popular is software called Tailwinds. We were really interested in using this because it would create a shared language of atomic design components for designers and developers to talk across. Design has always been a bottleneck on our team. And so during our redesign, we said, hey, is there like a way we can bake in our design system, some of our type sizes, et cetera, into our CSS classes so that our developers can more easily use them? And so true to our form, we built a custom atomic CSS library that we lovingly call Sol, after the artist Sol LeWitt, which is a little bit of an art nerd thing. Here are two screenshots. One on the left is of our screen, and the one on the right is of our website. But what's really cool is that they're built on the same set of atomic CSS. So then a designer can say, hey, I want you to use typography at this specific size, and oh, can you make it like 33% opacity and have like a unit of spacing around it? And a developer can then take each of those directives and find classes within our CSS that does each of those. And one of the really cool things that we worked even harder to work on was introducing baseline alignment and typographic spacing to our CSS library. This is something that is super easy to do in desktop publishing and software, but hasn't really quite landed in web development yet. And so after about half a year of really hard work in getting this out, we finally landed on these atoms that we can say, hey, I want to have all of this land on the same baseline, regardless of type size, and then a developer can actually make this happen because we have atoms for setting heights of images and containers based on baseline height. Another really cool example of this in practice is on our locations, hours, and admission page, where we've managed to get baseline alignment across multiple columns with different media by using a mixture of atoms that let us set similar type on the same baseline and atoms for height on images in the logo. So this image is actually sized based upon a height of 14 baselines, which everything around it is on the same grid. And we think it's pretty cool that we were able to do this.
So what's next for us? Our site is a continuous work in progress, and we're always working iteratively to improve on the artist index and the screens and the rest of our products. But as I'm sure many of you can relate to, the pandemic has shifted the demands placed on our site and our screens, and we're finding ourselves thinking about how we can adapt the systems we've built to suit our new reality. We're thinking about how we use our digital surfaces in place of physical touch points that visitors can no longer touch, as well as bigger questions about what it means to experience MoMA online in an equal sense as to in the galleries. As the museum's programming becomes more dynamic in more ways than one, we're excited to see how our role as product designers can support that mission. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you have a great time at the rest of the conference. Thank you.